Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my REI Secret Weapon, where we are a virtual Build Your Financial Future book club. I know you've been waiting patiently for the end of Think and Grow Rich. We are finally on chapter 14, the last chapter. I hope you had an amazing and phenomenal experience with the reading and the homework. Again, this chapter, the homework that I selected from the book, again, this is my copy, is the same as the action guide that action guide donated by C. Stacy Sunday. They're the same. So the homework that I selected out of the book, or what I understood the homework to be, is again the action guides selection. So let's get started, shall we? Chapter 14, How to Outwit the Six Ghosts of Fear. Take inventory of yourself. That's pretty difficult for a lot of us, right? Before you can put any portion of this philosophy into successful use, your mind must be prepared to receive it. The preparation is not difficult. It begins with study, analysis, and understanding of three enemies that you have to clear out of your mind: indecision, doubt, and fear. Your sixth sense will never function while these three negatives, or any one of them, remain in your mind. The members of this unholy trio are closely related. Where one is found, the other two are close at hand. Indecision is the seedling of fear. Remember that indecision crystallizes into doubt. The two blend and become fear. The blending process is often slow. This is one reason why these three enemies are so dangerous. They germinate and grow without their presence even being observed. The purpose of this chapter is to turn the spotlight on the cause and the cure of the six basic fears. Before we can master any enemy, we must know its name, its habits, and its place of abode. As you read, analyze yourself carefully and determine which, if any, of the six common fears have attached to you. Do not be deceived by the habits of these subtle enemies. Sometimes they remain hidden in the subconscious mind, where they are difficult to locate and still more difficult to eliminate. A friend of mine by the name of Beth Amlung, she's an empathy coach. She's teaching us how to connect with one another and have meaningful relationships and communication with one another. And one of the assessments that she runs is an assessment, a saboteur assessment that tells us what are the voices in our minds and in our psyche that speak to us in a negative way and try to hold us back from being our highest and best self. If you're hearing this before the end of December 2025, I believe that Beth is running a special on those assessments. You can text me 502-876-7078 to get connected with Beth if that's something that you're interested in. Going back. The six basic fears. There are six basic fears that every human suffers from at one time or another. Most people are fortunate if they do not suffer from the entire six. Named in the order of their most common appearance, they are the fears of 1, poverty, 2, criticism, 3, ill health, 4, loss of someone's love, 5, old age, and 6 is death. All other fears are of minor importance and can be grouped under these 6 headings. The prevalence of these fears as a curse to the world runs in cycles. For almost 6 years during the Great Depression, many floundered in the cycle of the fear of poverty. During the world wars, many lived in the cycle of the fear of death. Following wars, many live in the cycle of the fear of ill health, evidenced by the epidemic of diseases worldwide. They're referring to the tuberculosis epidemic and the Spanish flu epidemic. Fears are nothing more than states of mind. Our states of mind are subject to control and direction. It's been said that physicians are less subject to attack by disease than other people because physicians do not fear disease. Without fear or hesitation, they have been known to physically contact hundreds of people daily who are suffering from such contagious diseases, yet do not become infected. Their immunity against the disease consists largely, if not solely, in their lack of fear. We have discovered since over 100 years ago that some of that is by keeping our germs to ourselves, right? Doctors a lot of times wear masks. They often wear gloves. And if they're not wearing gloves, they wash their hands very frequently, right? So these are also things that help keep doctors and nurses and other people from contracting diseases as readily and as easily as they did, in Napoleon Hill's time. Humans can create nothing that they do not first conceive in the form of an impulse of thought. Following this statement comes another of still greater importance. Our thought impulses begin immediately to translate into a physical equivalent, whether those thoughts are voluntary or involuntary. Thought impulses picked up through the ether by mere chance, meaning thoughts that have been released by other minds, may determine your financial, business, professional, or even your social destiny, just as surely as do the thought impulses that we create by intent and design. We are here laying the foundation for the presentation of a fact of great importance to the person who does not understand why some people appear to be lucky, while others of equal or greater ability, training, experience, and brain capacity seem destined to ride with misfortune. This fact may be explained by the statement that every human being has the ability to completely control their own minds, and with this control, obviously, every person may open their minds to the negative thought impulses being released by other brains, or close the doors tightly and admit only thought impulses of their own choice. Nature has endowed us with absolute control. Nature has endowed us with absolute control over one thing, thought. This fact, coupled with the additional fact that everything we create begins in the form of a thought, leads us very near to the principle by which fear may be mastered. If it is true that all thought has a tendency to clothe itself in its physical equivalent, this is true beyond any reasonable room for doubt. It is equally true that thought impulses of fear and poverty cannot be translated into terms of courage and financial gain. The 6 basic fears become translated into a state of worry through indecision. Take these steps to overcome fears. First, relieve yourself forever of the fear of death by deciding to accept death as an inescapable event. Next, whip the fear of poverty by reaching a decision to get along with whatever wealth you can accumulate without worry. So you're getting along with your resources without worry. Next, put your foot upon the neck of the fear of criticism by deciding not to worry about what other people do, say, or think. Next, eliminate the fear of old age by deciding to accept it not as a handicap, but as a great blessing that carries with it wisdom, self-control, and understanding not known to youth. Next, acquit yourself of the fear of ill health by deciding to forget symptoms. And last, master the fear of loss of love by deciding to get along without love if that is necessary. Kill the habit of worry in all its forms by reaching a general blanket decision that nothing life has to offer is worth the price of worry. With this decision comes poise, peace of mind, and calmness of thought that will bring happiness. A person whose mind is filled with fear not only destroys his or her chances of intelligent action, but transmits these destructive vibrations to the minds of all with whom they come into contact. Our important summary points: before you can put this philosophy into successful use, you must clear your mind of three enemies: indecision, doubt, and fear. Indecision is the seedling of fear. It crystallizes into doubt, and the two blend and become fear. There are 6 basic fears: poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of someone's love, old age, and death. Fears are nothing more than states of mind that can be altered and eliminated. Now we're taking action. The following are 57 famous alibis by Old Man If. As you read each one, make a mark by the ones you have used as an alibi for not being as successful or as happy as you could be. I'm going to read them twice. If I didn't have a wife and family, if I had enough pull, if I had money, if I had a good education, if I could get a job, if I had good health, and I personally checked this one, if I only had time, if times were better, if other people understood me, if conditions around me were different, if I could live my life over again, if I did not fear what they would say, if I had been given a chance, if I only had a chance, if other people didn't have it in for me, if nothing happens to stop me, if I were only younger, if I could only do what I want, if I had been born rich, if I could meet the right people, if I had the talent that some people have, if I dared assert myself, if I only had embraced past opportunities, if people didn't get on my nerves, if I didn't have to keep house and look after the children, if I could save some money, if the boss appreciated me, if I only had somebody to help me, I checked that one as well, if my family understood me, if I lived in a big city, if I could just get started, if I were free, if I had the personality of some people, if I were not so fat, if my talents were known, if I could just get a break, if I could only get out of debt, if I hadn't failed, if I only knew how. I checked this one as well because I'm often, okay, how do I do this? And I'll figure it out. So I don't know if that's so much an alibi or an excuse or a motivator, but I checked it anyway. If everybody didn't oppose me, if I didn't have so many worries, if I could marry the right person, if people weren't so dumb, if my family were not so extravagant, if I were sure of myself, if luck were not against me, if I had not been born under the wrong star, if it were not true that what will be, if I did not have to work so hard, if I hadn't lost my money, if I lived in a different neighborhood, if I didn't have a past, if I only had a business of my own, if other people would only listen to me, if, and this is the greatest excuse of them all, if I had the courage to see myself as I really am, I would find out what is wrong with me and correct it. Then I might have a chance to profit from my mistakes and learn something from the experience of others. For I know that there is something wrong with me, or I would now be where I would have been if I had spent more time analyzing my weaknesses and less time building alibis to cover them. Building alibis is a deeply rooted habit. Habits are difficult to break, especially when they provide justification for something that we do. Plato had this truth in mind when he said, the first and best victory is to conquer self. To be conquered by self is of all things the most shameful and vile. I'm going to go through them one more time very quickly just to make sure that you heard them. If I didn't have a wife and family, if I had enough pull, if I had money, if I had a good education, if I could get a job, if I had good health, if I only had time, if time were better, if other people understood me, if conditions around me were different, if I could live my life over again, if I did not fear what they would say, if I had been given a chance, if I only had a chance, if other people didn't have it in for me, if nothing happens to stop me, if I were only younger, if I could only do what I want, if I had been born rich, if I could meet the right people, if I had the talent that some people have, if I dared assert myself, if I only had embraced past opportunities, if people didn't get on my nerves, if I didn't have to keep house and look after the children, if I could save some money, if the boss appreciated me, if I only had somebody to help me, if my family understood me, if I lived in a big city, if I could just get started, if I were free, if I had the personality of some people, if I were not so fat, if my talents were known, if I could just get a break, if I could only get out of debt, if I hadn't failed, if I only knew how, if everybody didn't oppose me, if I didn't have so many worries, if I could marry the right person, if people weren't so dumb, if my family were not so extravagant, if I were sure of myself, if luck were not against me, if I had not been born under the right star, if it were not true that what will be, if I did not have to work so hard, if I hadn't lost my money, if I lived in a different neighborhood, if I didn't have a past, if I only had a business of my own, if other people would only listen to me, if, and this is the greatest excuse of them all, if I had the courage to see myself as I really am, I would find out what is wrong with me and correct it. Then I might have a chance to profit from my mistakes and learn something from the experience of others. For I know that there is something wrong with me, or I would now be where I would have been if I had spent more time analyzing my weaknesses and less time building alibis to cover them. Conclusion. Here we go. Here's the end. The author discovered through personally analyzing hundreds of successful people that all of them followed the habit of exchanging ideas. When they had problems to be solved, they sat down together and talked freely until they discovered from their joint contribution of ideas a plan that would serve their purpose. You will get most of what you learned in this workbook by putting into practice the mastermind principle. This you can do, as others are doing so successfully, by forming a study club consisting of any desired number of people who are friendly and harmonious. The club should meet regularly, as often as once each week, and should consist of reading one chapter of Think and Grow Rich at each meeting and discussing the contents freely by all members. Each person should take notes, writing ideas that come to mind inspired by the discussion. Prior to each meeting, members should carefully read and complete this corresponding chapter in the workbook. It should be decided by the group members if everyone will share their answers in the workbook or limit discussion to the book. Lucky for you guys, I'm the only one sharing. You don't have to share. You don't have to face that fear of criticism unless you want to put something in the comments. Feel free to do that. Or even in the Facebook group, Build Your Financial Future Book Club. By following this plan, you will benefit not only from the sum total of the best knowledge organized from the experiences of hundreds of successful men, but more important by far, you will tap new sources of knowledge in your own mind, as well as acquire knowledge of priceless value from others present. Riches cannot always be measured in money. Remember, riches cannot always be measured in money. Money and material things are essential for freedom of body and mind, but there are some who will feel that the greatest of all riches can be evaluated only in terms of lasting friendships, harmonious family relationships, sympathy, and measurable only in spiritual values. Nevertheless, if you understand and apply the 13 steps and adopt this philosophy, you will be better prepared to attract and enjoy higher estates that always have been and always will be denied to all except those who are ready for them. Be prepared, therefore, when you expose yourself to the influence of this philosophy, to experience a changed life that can help you not only to negotiate your way through life with harmony and understanding, but also prepare you for the accumulation of material riches in abundance. In the back of the workbook, there are a number of titles by the Napoleon Hill Foundation. If you enjoyed this book, try these other official publications of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. The Power of Making Miracles, Napoleon Hill's Keys to Personal Achievement, A Treasury of Success Unlimited, Napoleon Hill's Greatest Speeches, W. Clement Stone's Believe and Achieve Success with People. Not sure. I think those are two separate books. W. Clement Stone's Believe and Achieve Success with People, Napoleon Hill's Power of Positive Action, Napoleon Hill's Gold Standard, Wisdom for Winners, Volume 1, Wisdom for Winners, Volume 2, W. Clement Stone's Success System That Never Fails, Think and Grow Rich. I've also heard, excuse me, I got a little tickle. Learned from one of my listeners that there was a lost chapter to Think and Grow Rich. So if someone wants to drop it at my office, I'll drop it on the YouTube channel. Maybe I'll come back to it later. You guys know I have a whole list of titles that I've been holding back. I'm ready to finish the Orange Revolution first and foremost. And then we're going to move on to some titles written by some friends and associates of mine that will also help you. If this channel and this episode is bringing value to you and you'd like to bless me, you can do so through Venmo at Havon Fun with Renee, HAVONWITHRENEE. You can also send via PayPal to info@b&blocationservices.com. It's info@b&blocationservices.com. You can also slide me cash when you see me. You can buy me food and beverages when you see me out and about. Feel free to share my posts and things on Facebook, Instagram, whatever is on your heart to bless me for bringing value to your life and to your success. We'll be moving on to Orange Revolution, chapter 2, I think is where we left off. I'll make sure. I might actually start over from scratch because the Orange Revolution is kind of buried in the backstory. And it might be easier for you folks who are listening to the chapters in order. it might be easier for you to follow along if I start from scratch. So we'll see next month, right? All right, kids, have a wonderful holiday season. Stay warm. My gift to you this year is that we're finished with this title and all the homework. And now we forge ahead and grow rich, right? Now that we know how to think rich, now we're going to grow rich. All right, kids,